Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Congresswoman Victoria Spartz. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Brittany, for having me.
We have a wide-ranging conversation today, so why don't we dive right into it? Let's first talk about some news that broke over the weekend. In a stunning reversal, because President Biden and his administration have said they wouldn't have done it for months, the president pardoned his son, Hunter Biden, and the move effectively erases tax and gun convictions against the president's son. What's your reaction to the move?
Well, it's unfortunate. It further really decreases trust of American people to our government. It shows a double standard and hypocrisy. I mean, it was expected that he's going to do it. It's expected that politicians are going to lie, and as he did lie, but it's unfortunately undermines our system. And really, our system is based on the equality of rights and for all Americans, and have a judicial system, to be honest, that American can trust. And right now we can see that we have political elites. They have their own laws and standards, and their children and families, and and we have everyone else. And I think that is a very, very dangerous trend and can undermine our fundamental principles. I mean, it wasn't like Hunter did something, political. It's actually, he actually defrauded IRS. He was spending money in adult entertainment. Any other American would be in jail for that. They didn't even really press charges on that. They had let statute of limitation expire, got smaller charges, but even got away with smaller charges. And it's really, it's a very serious precedent sets for the future of our country. And you can see what they do and how they treat President Trump, and you can see how they treat President Biden or Clinton or, and the rest of their family. It's very different.
Let's talk about that precedent it sets. I was speaking with your colleague, Congressman Tim Burchett, yesterday, and he agreed that the precedent it sets is that no one's above the law, except if you're the president or perhaps a president's family member. President Biden isn't the first president to pardon a family member. Would you support some sort of law that says, hey, presidents cannot pardon any family member?
Well, I think, it's going to be ultimately, I'll be honest with you, the laws we don't set up for family, not families, but I think we need to start thinking what elected politicians, are doing or not doing, and really what standards they set and for everyone else and for themselves. I think it goes back on their legacy. It will go back on him, and really, I think it's going to taint from both sides of the aisle the legacy of, which wasn't very good, at all. I will be honest with you, of President Biden, but I think it's going to get it even worse. But I think, unfortunately, it's not just, fixing by the law related to the families. There is so much corruption over there and self-dealing and so much money in the whole judicial system, Department of Justice, FBI, being corrupt all across the board. They prosecute people for political reasons, and we have cartels and criminals roaming around on the streets and open borders, and then school board parents or people just show up unhappy with government on January 6th are sitting in jail. So I think there is much more to do. It's really going to be on President Biden, but I wouldn't just, this point start dealing with specifically this laws. And I hope that American people would start thinking we don't have dynasties, we don't have kings and successors, and we're ultimately a republic, with equality of rights, and maybe we'll start, electing better people.
Some defenders of President Biden have said things like, of course, you would do that for your son. Who wouldn't do that as a father? President Biden himself said this: I hope Americans will understand why a father and a president would come to this decision. What do you think of that argument specifically?
Well, I think it has nothing to do. He's an executive of the country. You can do things as the father, but you use an executive power as a leader, as an executive to do self-dealing and, to have a different treatment to your family. This is only happened in corrupt countries, in countries like we talk about, like Russia and China, where it's all, political elites and people on top are having a different treatment, So it's truly embarrassing for our country, that we try to talk about it. President Biden supposedly, we are like, trying to be defenders of democracy. This is embarrassing. It shows us around the world. It makes us as a laughing stock around the world to show like, oh, you guys really? You go there and tell us how we need to be so much better and what is happening in your country. So this is a really big strike against our, democracy, against our republic and truly fundamentals as a country. country, not just inside the country, but also around the world. And I think it will have some consequences for that. And unfortunately, it's been happening for too long. And I think that's why American people want to change, and they want to truly drain the swamp. And this election was a result of it.
Can you expand on that a little more? What do you think the consequences of President Biden pardoning his son will be?
Well, I think, it's a further erosion of trust of the American people. And if American people don't trust the system of government, well, listen, I mean, Congress has, 12% approval rating? I think it's worse than senile president. So I think his approval rating probably went down significantly. But when you have such a low level of approval of government and trust, this becomes very dangerous, because we ultimately have a system where people were willing to give up some of their money to protect their rights, and give some power to the government, limited power, but power to protect our rights. But when we see now that the government is infringing on rights of law-abiding Americans and ordinary citizens, but pretty much political elites and people with money can get away with committing crimes and not being punished for that, that is further undermine us. And it's become very, very dangerous, because at some point we will reach the point where people will say enough is enough, and we can have a very serious situation in the country if we don't go back and try to build that trust. And this is going to be a big challenge for my party. If we don't deliver, if we're again big talking heads and doing presentations, and the chance was given to us with winning both houses and presidency, and we actually don't deliver again to restore the fundamentals and principles of our country that makes us great, then, we might actually lose this republic to a very radical Marxist group of people.
I'm sure you've seen a mixed response from this. Democrats have congratulated President Biden. They've also been very critical of Biden's decision. Republicans have been way more united in being critical of the president. Do you agree with calls, though, from some of your colleagues saying that this calls for an impeachment against President Biden?
Well, at this point, I think he was pretty much impeached. So I think, at this point, I think, his history, and then he will go in history, and he'll be judged by the American people in history. I think we need to concentrate how we can be governing. I think we need to concentrate, how we're going to go, and actually deliver for the American people and have the right policy ready for next Congress, because there are a lot of problems in the country. I mean, we went through a lot of drama impeachment and didn't seal the deal. He could have been impeached very many times. I'll be honest with you, my side is not as good and actually delivering on some of the things as talking about delivering. The other side can make up stuff, and come after us. And we on the real facts couldn't even put together the case and couldn't even impeach before him. And what happened was the border and everything, all corruption, what Hunter was doing, it was awful, but nothing happened to him. So at this point, I think he was, Kamala Harris was a great, was a result, but it was a great example to see that people, enough is enough, and the craziness, of American people are fed up with the craziness and everything what they were doing. But I think, at this point, we need to concentrate on governing and delivering and actually restoring the system and fix this Department of Justice and FBI from corruption and a lot of other agencies in DC.
Let's talk about some of those agencies, specifically the DOJ and the FBI. You've compared the DOJ and FBI to the KGB in hearings with AG Garland as well as FBI Director Christopher Wray. So tell me what reforms you specifically want to see both in the FBI and the DOJ.
Well, I think it's all about the money. I think, unfortunately, the core functions of these agencies that should be dealing with serious criminals, with cartels, with drug trafficking, human trafficking, they're not performing. And they go after law-abiding Americans. They try to make, school-board parents to put them in domestic terrorist lists because they're unhappy how terribly their kids are educated. Well, I think they should be way more unhappy. The parents should be probably, demonstrating every state house, and demanding the states to do something. Only 30% of our kids are eligible to go in the military. We have some of the lowest achievements and educational outcomes. And we cannot have a country where 20% of people will be pulling 80. We need to have 80% of population be able to help 20. We will always be able, we'll have people that need to help. But we need to educate children, give them skills, empower them to live in a tough society, which is getting much more fast-paced, and get fundamental skills. I mean, we have some schools in regions where only 10% of kids can read, and they still graduated for schools. I mean, this is a criminal what we do in that. So I think they should be upset about it, and we need to deal with that. But I think we need to go back and see what's happening within these agencies. And you can see like a Durham report, right? They pretty much did a setup to take presidential candidate, President Trump at that time, and no one got punished. And a lot of these agencies, get away to scheming, to be able to not enforce the law or decide to come after political opponents. So I think there should be consequences, and people should pay a price for using government power, to abusing government power. And I think this is something we need to do some reforms inside and look at what's happening with some of these, people that should be losing clearances, and some of them, should be probably some charges should be pressed, but they should be investigated. And I think we need to make sure that we're spending money and authorizing this agency. DOJ and FBI hasn't been authorized for decades. So I hope, Chairman Jordan will actually set up. I've been pushing for him this Congress, and hopefully he will start doing it, like a authorization subcommittee where we will have hearings about all of these programs, and they're going to come to the table. And a lot of people are going to say why they need money and tell us what they're spending, and we're going to decide if we should be giving them money or not.
I know that you said that the DOJ, the FBI should be investigated here. What do you think those probes should specifically look like?
Well, I think, and I think if you saw that, look at them. FISA, warrantless surveillance with the FBI and the abuses, right? So we need to look some of the key areas where they abuse it. We still don't have a good system. We passed reauthorization, but I think, we still don't have a good, even the internal audit wasn't able to set up system and make sure that, they have proper controls, that they're not abusing the system. But we set up very, very broad laws, and the authorization of FISA, still allows warrantless surveillance, collection of data. So I think it should be looked at that. And maybe hopefully, fortunately, we didn't reauthorize it, for 5 years. It's only for 2 years. So I think we will have an opportunity under this president, maybe fix it and see what they're doing. There are a lot of things in the system where they're using power of the government to survey people illegally, unconstitutionally. This is very serious. If we turn us into surveillance KGB state, people will lose all of the powers. And I think we'll need to look at some laws and protection, and maybe as part of that, respond with some laws, and specifically with laws how we can limit the power abuses of that they're spent on true criminals, not on Americans that they don't like, that, they're willing to stand up and say something against the government. This is like a Soviet Union when I grew up, when you say something about government, you might be in jail, or they'll put you like in some mental institution or send criminals on you. That's what we are becoming. That's very, very dangerous.
Congresswoman, I want to respect your time, and I know I only have a few more minutes, so I would love to do a rapid-fire Q&A with some of Trump's cabinet picks to get your reaction. So let's start with Trump ally Kash Patel to serve as FBI director. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think he will be great. We actually been on the campaign trail with him in Pennsylvania. He's smart, bright. He understands the law. He was in a lot of positions that he understands the system too. So because a lot of times, I came from a business world, but I also been in politics for some time, and I understand the system from inside. So I think understanding that, he will be much more effective than if you just bring someone who never really dealt with government. So I think he'll be a very strong fighter for freedom. So I think it's a very good nomination.
What about Donald Trump's pick for Attorney General Pam Bondi?
Oh, she's a tough lady. I always say never underestimate determined women. We're tough cookies to survive in tough environments. Bright, smart, very good attorney. She understands the law, and I think it's important. And she has a practice and experience dealing with the complicated issue in the criminals. And really, that office needs to be dealing with organized crime and drugs and everything else. And her experience, what she done in Florida, would be amazing to help that agency. But also, she's not afraid, and she's a bold and strong woman. And I think it's important to have people with courage there.
I want to ask about probably the most controversial pick, former Fox News host Pete Hegseth as Department of Defense Secretary. He faces a whole host of allegations, from everything from drunken behavior in front of staffers to sexual assault allegations. What do you make of that pick?
Well, listen, I think, there are a lot of things that people talking to see. I think everyone should go through the process, but ultimately, everyone innocent until proven guilty. Everything in DC was said, we should take with a grain of salt. I think he will go through the process. And, people say a lot of things in DC. People get paid to say a lot of things and write hit pieces, especially if you're an independent thinker and willing to challenge the status quo. But I think he should go through the process. And honestly, we need to have some fresh people with fresh ideas. I'm very excited about some picks in a variety of areas because we need to have someone who's willing to challenge the status quo. American people are tired of corruption and status quo in Washington, D.C. So we need to bring people that bold and not afraid of that. And I think, we have a processes that they go through that, but I think people should give and take everything, with the grain of salt that happened in Washington, D.C. and truly look and see what is true, what is not. And I think he's entitled to true consideration what's really happening.
Congresswoman, you and I had a conversation earlier this year. It was right around when you decided you were going to run for re-election again. You have won last month, so a big congratulations to you. So what is your major priority, your biggest goal heading into your next term of Congress?
I think we need to, fix fiscal situation with our country. I think we have enormous amount of debt and spending, driven mainly by healthcare, and we're not getting healthy. I'm actually very excited, of Oz and RFK Jr. hopefully be my allies in administration, because Senate will be a fight. But I hope we can have some reforms to start getting spending and inflation under control, or we're on calamity course, and in a very few years we can have a very, very serious situation with not be able to refinance our debt and all of the interest spending and everything else. So I think we have to. This is one of the biggest. Border security and national debt are two most important national security issues. And as a CPA who spent over a decade in public finances, I truly understand the magnitude of problems and been trying to work on solutions. We actually have meetings with Elon this week and a few other members, and hopefully we'll have solutions to deliver next Congress.
Well, Congresswoman, as the next Congress gets underway, as you begin to tackle these issues, I hope you come back on and join me and we can have another conversation. Thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.